The Galactic Armada descended like a tidal wave, its massive warships blotting out the stars above Earth. Their ultimatum echoed across every channel: surrender or face annihilation. The message was clinical, devoid of emotion, as if humanity's survival was merely a line item in their conquest ledger. But Earth refused to kneel. Across the planet, the United Earth Defense Force scrambled into action. Every satellite, fighter, and missile array was activated, even as the officers issuing commands knew they were woefully outmatched. Above the planet, the alien fleet shimmered with a predatory elegance. Sleek hulls radiated energy fields, their weaponry designed to pulverize entire civilizations with precision. In contrast, Earth's defenses seemed crude, a patchwork of aging orbital platforms and jury-rigged ships. Yet, as the Armada's commanders prepared to open fire, they were met with defiance. Human fighters streaked toward the alien vessels, missiles cutting across the void. Lasers from ground installations carved fleeting beams of light through space. The response was brutal. Alien warships retaliated with unerring accuracy, unleashing a torrent of plasma bursts and kinetic strikes that rained fire onto Earth's surface. Major cities were reduced to smoldering ruins, their ashes carried by winds of despair. Orbital platforms disintegrated one by one, leaving nothing but debris fields in their wake. Despite the carnage, humanity fought on, every effort aimed at buying precious time. On the surface, chaos reigned. Families huddled in bunkers, listening to the distant roar of explosions. Emergency broadcasts urged calm, but the sight of alien ships carving through the atmosphere shattered any illusion of safety. In the skies above, pilots pushed their outdated fighters to the brink, executing desperate maneuvers to evade enemy fire. For every alien ship they downed, 10 more seemed to take its place. As the hours passed, it became clear that Earth could not withstand the onslaught. The president of the United Earth Alliance, speaking from an underground command center, issued the unthinkable, an evacuation order. Across the globe, military transports and civilian vessels scrambled to lift survivors off the planet. The skies were filled with ships, many hastily patched together, fleeing toward the relative safety of distant colonies. Yet, amid the retreat, a faint glimmer of hope emerged. A coded message was broadcast to all remaining military frequencies. Its contents were simple but electrifying. "Hold the line. Dreadnoughts incoming." The words spread like wildfire among the defenders. Few knew what it meant, but whispers of the Dreadnoughts had existed for years, hints of colossal, secret warships built in the shadow of Earth's doom. To the Galactic Armada, the message was laughable. Their intelligence had dismissed Earth's technological capabilities as primitive. They assumed this was a desperate bluff, the final act of a cornered species. But among humanity's ranks, the message ignited something deeper, a resolve to endure. Soldiers, engineers, and pilots dug in, vowing to hold their ground until the end. In a fortified outpost overlooking the ruins of a once thriving city, a lone commander stood watching the fires burn. His armor was battered, his face streaked with ash and sweat. Behind him, a ragtag group of soldiers waited for orders, their faces etched with fatigue and determination. "Look at them," the commander said, gesturing to the alien ships hovering in the distance. "They think they've already won. They don't understand us." One of his subordinates, a young lieutenant, spoke up. "Do you think the Dreadnoughts are real, sir?" The commander smiled faintly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Does it matter? What matters is that we fight. As long as one of us stands, Earth isn't lost." Nearby, a communications officer worked furiously, relaying evacuation updates and coordinating with what remained of Earth's fleet. Every now and then, her gaze drifted to the cryptic message glowing on her screen. "Dreadnoughts incoming." She didn't know what it meant, but she held onto it like a lifeline. Across the stars, humanity's enemies prepared for their final push. But in the hearts of Earth's defenders, hope flickered like the embers of a dying fire, small, fragile, but impossible to extinguish. The alien admiral stood at the heart of the command deck, his towering frame bathed in the cold glow of holographic displays. His gaze swept over the projection of Earth, now littered with scars from orbital bombardments. To him, This was not a battlefield but a formality, a step in a campaign that had crushed countless civilizations before. Humanity was no different, a species too young to understand its place at the bottom of the cosmic hierarchy. Pathetic, he muttered, his voice resonating through the chamber. Around him, officers of varying ranks and species snapped to attention. They had heard this tone before. It was the same contempt the Admiral reserved for any species foolish enough to resist. A flick of his clawed hand brought up another display, records of the Armada's previous conquests. There were countless examples, worlds rendered lifeless, fleets obliterated with surgical precision, entire cultures reduced to footnotes in the Armada's archives. It was a record of dominance, one the Admiral intended to extend over Earth without exception. Humanity fights like cornered vermin, he continued, his mandibles clicking in disdain. They throw their lives away on futile gestures. They lack the discipline, the technology, the foresight to pose any real threat. One of his senior officers, a slender figure with crystalline skin, nodded in agreement. Their resistance is amusing, but the outcome is inevitable. The planet will fall within days. Still, not everyone on the bridge shared their confidence. Toward the rear of the room, an alien historian quietly observed the proceedings. Her species valued knowledge over conquest, and while she served the Armada out of obligation, she had spent years studying humanity. She found them peculiar. Admiral, she ventured cautiously, her voice cutting through the air. Humanity has surprised us before. Their history is rife with examples of resilience, of victories snatched from impossible odds. They may not possess our technology, but their adaptability. Enough, the Admiral snapped, turning his piercing gaze toward her. Adaptability does not win wars. Superior firepower does. They are a curiosity, nothing more. Their refusal to surrender will be their undoing. The historian fell silent, but her unease lingered. She had seen the patterns, the way humanity responded unpredictably to pressure, their ability to innovate under dire circumstances. Something about the cryptic messages intercepted from Earth troubled her. Dreadnoughts incoming. The Armada dismissed it as desperation, yet it felt deliberate. Among the Admiral's staff, a few others shared her quiet doubts. A tactical officer had reviewed footage of Earth's defenses, noting how their forces had managed to delay the Armada's advance longer than expected. It wasn't enough to change the outcome, but it hinted at a deeper level of resourcefulness than the Admiral cared to acknowledge. For now, dissent was confined to whispers. The Armada's hierarchy was absolute, and its successes had bred a dangerous overconfidence. The Admiral, bolstered by centuries of unbroken victories, saw no reason to question his strategy. With Earth's surface in ruins and its defenses crumbling, he turned his attention to the broader campaign. Prepare the fleet for the next phase, he commanded. Earth is finished. We will move deeper into human territory and eliminate the colonies before they can regroup. As officers relayed his orders, the fleet began to reposition, their massive warships casting long shadows over Earth's atmosphere. In their wake, they left devastation, confident there was nothing left to challenge their dominance. The Admiral viewed the cryptic warnings about dreadnoughts as nothing more than empty bravado, a species clinging to hope in its final moments. Yet, subtle signs hinted at something the Armada couldn't quite explain. Strange energy signatures appeared in nearby sectors, fleeting and difficult to trace. Small pockets of resistance behind the front lines coordinated with an efficiency that suggested more than desperation. And then there was the unnerving absence of any significant human command ships. Where had their strongest vessels gone? The historian reviewed these anomalies in silence, her unease growing. Admiral, she began again, carefully choosing her words. There are inconsistencies in our data. The humans are not behaving as expected. This evacuation effort, these anomalies, it is possible they are positioning themselves for. Do not insult this fleet with superstitions, the Admiral interrupted, his voice sharp. Humanity does not possess the capacity for strategy on this scale. Whatever anomalies you perceive are irrelevant. Focus on the task at hand. Despite his dismissal, the anomalies persisted. A few officers took note, quietly running simulations and analyzing intercepted communications. The phrase, "Dreadnoughts incoming," appeared repeatedly, its meaning unclear. To most, it was a riddle not worth solving. To a select few, it was a shadow on the horizon, a sign that perhaps humanity was not as broken as it seemed. The fleet pressed forward, oblivious to what lay ahead. As Earth's surface burned, the Armada's arrogance grew, blinding them to the possibilities that had kept the historian awake at night. If humanity's history had taught her anything, it was this: their greatest strength lay in the unexpected. The Galactic Armada was poised for its final strike, the remnants of Earth's defenses scattered like dust before an unstoppable wind. On the command deck of the lead ship, the alien admiral watched as the last of humanity's orbital stations disintegrated under concentrated fire. The victory seemed inevitable, the conclusion of this campaign a foregone conclusion. And then, the blips appeared. At first, they were dismissed as debris or malfunctioning sensors. Massive energy signatures blinked onto the fleet's displays, distant but unmistakable. As the signals grew closer, the Armada's officers scrambled for explanations. These readings were far too large to be evacuation ships, yet they lacked the signature profiles of anything in Earth's known fleet. Panic rippled through the ranks, subdued at first, but quickly escalating as more officers confirmed the anomaly. "What are they?" one officer demanded, his voice betraying a crack in the Armada's veneer of confidence. The admiral leaned forward, his claws tapping against the control panel as he studied the readouts. The energy signatures were growing stronger, approaching rapidly. For the first time in decades, his confidence wavered. Whatever these objects were, they were not running. They were coming straight for the fleet. And then they arrived. Through the Armada's sensors, the human dreadnoughts revealed themselves. Emerging from the void, their colossal forms eclipsed anything the aliens had anticipated. They were like nothing the Armada had ever encountered. Towering constructs of metal and power, they bristled with weaponry that defied conventional design. They were rough, utilitarian, and distinctly human, blending rugged practicality with a primal, almost predatory aesthetic. The lead dreadnought dwarfed even the Armada's command ships. Its angular hull was scarred and blackened, a testament to the extreme environments in which it had been forged. Turrets the size of small buildings rotated into position, energy cannons glowing with a menacing red light. Massive thrusters adjusted its position with a precision that belied its immense size. The alien fleet hesitated, uncertainty gripping them. Then the dreadnoughts opened fire. The first volley shattered the silence of space, beams of pure energy lancing through the Armada's formation. Entire squadrons disintegrated in an instant, their shields offering no resistance against the overwhelming firepower. Missile salvos erupted from the dreadnoughts' underbellies, carving paths of destruction through the enemy lines. The Armada attempted to retaliate, but their weapons barely dented the human vessels. Layers of adaptive armor absorbed incoming fire, while energy shields flared brilliantly, deflecting even the Armada's heaviest ordnance. The dreadnoughts moved with calculated precision, targeting key ships in the fleet and dismantling the Armada's coordinated efforts. As the battle unfolded, the full scope of humanity's ingenuity became apparent. These warships were the result of decades of clandestine planning and relentless determination. Hidden deep within asteroid belts and on isolated colonies, the dreadnoughts had been constructed in secret, away from prying eyes. Humanity had poured its remaining resources into their creation, pooling expertise from every corner of its scattered empire. Each dreadnought was equipped with adaptive AI capable of learning and predicting enemy tactics in real time. Their weapon systems employed unconventional technologies, graviton disruptors, plasma lances, and planet-cracking railguns, designed specifically to counter the Armada's advanced defenses. Even their shields were unlike anything the aliens had encountered, operating on a frequency that shifted faster than the Armada could compensate. The Armada, for all its technological superiority, had been caught off guard. These were not the scattered, desperate humans they had dismissed as insignificant. This was a species that had outthought and outmaneuvered them, preparing for a moment when it could strike back with overwhelming force. The alien admiral watched in stunned silence as his fleet faltered. Ship after ship fell, their debris fields growing larger with each passing moment. His officers shouted reports and suggestions, but none of it mattered. The Dreadnoughts were unstoppable, and their presence was more than just physical. They carried with them the weight of humanity's unyielding spirit, a message etched into every piece of their construction: Earth will not fall. Across human-controlled space, news of the Dreadnoughts spread like wildfire. Resistance groups on distant colonies received the broadcasts, their despair giving way to hope. Civilians who had resigned themselves to extinction now watched as their kind turned the tide of the battle. The sight of the Dreadnoughts in action was a rallying cry, a beacon for all who had doubted humanity's ability to endure. The Armada's once unshakable morale began to crumble. Officers who had spoken with smug certainty of Earth's defeat now whispered of retreat. Their confidence, built on centuries of unbroken conquest, was eroding under the sheer audacity of humanity's counterattack. The historian aboard the flagship observed this shift with quiet vindication. She had warned them, and now they were witnessing the cost of their arrogance. The admiral, his composure fraying, barked orders to regroup and counter the Dreadnoughts. But his commands were met with chaos. The Armada, so accustomed to overwhelming its enemies, had no contingency for facing such a force. And the Dreadnoughts pressed on, relentless and implacable. For every alien ship that fell, humanity regained a fragment of what it had lost. This was not just a battle, it was a statement. Against all odds, against every prediction, humanity had risen from the ashes and turned its greatest tragedy into the foundation of its resurgence. In the cold void of space, the Dreadnoughts were not just ships, they were the embodiment of Earth's resilience, its refusal to be conquered. And with every volley, they carved a path toward victory, reshaping the narrative of the war in humanity's favor. The counteroffensive began like a thunderclap in the void, shaking the Galactic Armada to its core. Humanity, once perceived as little more than an annoyance, now struck with precision and ferocity. The Dreadnoughts led the charge, coordinating with remaining human forces scattered across the galaxy. What was once a fractured defense became a unified assault, as Earth's survivors rallied behind their towering warships. The first blow came at the Armada's supply lines. Small, agile human frigates darted through the edges of the battlefield, exploiting gaps in the alien fleet's formations. Armed with experimental stealth technology, they targeted fuel depots, ammunition carriers, and command vessels, leaving chaos in their wake. The Armada, built on the assumption of superiority, was unprepared for such guerrilla tactics. Supply routes were severed, communications scrambled, and morale plummeted. Meanwhile, the Dreadnoughts carved a path of destruction through the heart of the enemy fleet. Their weapons, designed to exploit every known weakness of the Armada, tore through alien shields and hulls with brutal efficiency. Earth's engineers had not only matched but surpassed the technology of their adversaries, employing systems that adapted to enemy tactics in real time. Graviton cannons disrupted the formations of smaller ships, while plasma railguns punched through even the thickest armor. The Armada attempted to regroup, but the humans were relentless. Using surprise hyperspace jumps, Earth's fleets struck from unexpected angles, appearing where they should not have been able to reach. Each attack was timed to perfection, forcing the Armada to stretch itself thin as it scrambled to respond. Even in retreat, humanity's forces left traps behind, mines disguised as debris fields and decoy signals that led alien ships into ambushes. At the center of the conflict was Earth itself, now the stage for a climactic showdown. The alien admiral, desperate to salvage the campaign, ordered his flagship and its escort fleet to converge on the planet. Their goal was simple: destroy the Dreadnoughts and crush human resistance once and for all. The resulting battle was a spectacle of destruction and ingenuity. The Dreadnoughts stood as guardians over their homeworld, their immense forms casting shadows across the void. They moved with precision, their AI calculating every angle of attack and defense. The Armada, for all its bluster, found itself outmaneuvered at every turn. Human commanders orchestrated the fight like a symphony, each maneuver calculated to exploit the enemy's weaknesses. Smaller ships darted around the Dreadnoughts, drawing enemy fire and creating openings for devastating counterattacks. Fighters launched from hidden bases on Earth's surface joined the fray, swarming alien bombers that attempted to breach the planet's atmosphere. Inside the Dreadnoughts, crews worked tirelessly, their every action fueled by the knowledge that this battle would decide the fate of their species. Engineers monitored reactor cores, keeping the immense warships operational under relentless enemy fire. Gunners targeted weak points with unerring precision, their shots guided by both human intuition and AI precision. On the surface, civilians and soldiers alike joined in the defense. Makeshift bunkers housed resistance cells armed with salvaged weapons, ready to repel any alien forces that made it past the orbital battle. Families huddled together, listening to the distant rumble of explosions, their hope bolstered by the sight of the Dreadnoughts, holding the line. Amid the chaos, there was a moment of reflection. A young pilot, flying a battered fighter amidst the fray, spoke into his calms. "This is why we fight," he said, his voice steady despite the danger. "For every life they took, for every city they burned, we fight because we refuse to let them define us. Earth stands, and as long as it does, so will we." His words echoed through the fleet, a rallying cry for all who heard them. As the battle raged on, the tide turned decisively in humanity's favor. The Dreadnoughts, unyielding and relentless, targeted the Armada's flagship. The alien admiral, once so confident, now watched in disbelief as his fleet disintegrated around him. His command ship, a towering symbol of the Armada's might, was locked in a brutal exchange with the lead Dreadnought. The alien vessel unleashed a barrage of plasma and kinetic rounds, but the Dreadnought's adaptive shields absorbed the onslaught. Its counterattack was devastating. A railgun shot pierced the flagship's core, triggering a chain reaction that sent shockwaves through the surrounding fleet. The flagship's destruction marked the beginning of the end for the Armada. Disarray spread like wildfire. Some alien factions, recognizing the futility of continued resistance, signaled their surrender. Others attempted to retreat, their once formidable fleet reduced to scattered remnants. The admiral, unwilling to face the shame of defeat, perished aboard his ship as it erupted into flames. For the first time in generations, humanity stood victorious. The battle for Earth had been won, but the war was far from over. Across the galaxy, humans began to reclaim their territories, inspired by the resilience and ingenuity that had turned the tide. On Earth, celebrations erupted as the last of the alien ships were driven away. People poured into the streets, cheering for the Dreadnoughts that loomed overhead. They had faced annihilation and emerged stronger, proving that even in the darkest moments, humanity's spirit could not be extinguished. The victory sent a message to the galaxy, one that resonated far beyond Earth's borders. The Galactic Armada, once thought invincible, had been humbled. And humanity, battered but unbroken, had shown that it was a force to be reckoned with. Earth stood unyielding, a testament to the strength of a species that refused to bow, no matter the odds. The remnants of the Galactic Armada scattered like leaves before a storm, their once unshakable dominance reduced to desperate survival. Across the galaxy, whispers spread of humanity's defiance and the devastating might of the Dreadnoughts. Alien captains shared tales of the massive human warships with awe and trepidation, their hulking forms now a permanent fixture in the collective consciousness of the known universe. The survivors of Earth emerged from the rubble, battered but unbroken. Cities reduced to ashes were now lit with the fires of determination as rebuilding efforts began. Engineers, scientists, and workers labored side by side, their efforts driven not only by necessity but by the hard-won unity forged in the fires of war. Every scarred landscape, every ruined structure served as a reminder of what had been lost, and why it could never happen again. Above them, the Dreadnoughts remained, silent sentinels in orbit. Their mere presence was a testament to humanity's ingenuity and resilience. What had once been secretive projects hidden in asteroid belts were now celebrated as the saviors of Earth. Their hulking silhouettes became symbols, not just of power but of the indomitable spirit that refused to yield even in the face of annihilation. For soldiers who had fought in the trenches and civilians who had endured the onslaught, the Dreadnoughts were more than ships. They were hope incarnate, the embodiment of humanity's refusal to bow. Children stared at the skies, their imaginations fired by stories of the ships that turned the tide. Artists painted them, poets immortalized them, and leaders invoked them as a rallying cry for humanity's future. The galactic stage shifted in the aftermath of the war. Alien civilizations, many of which had long dismissed humanity as insignificant, now reevaluated their stance. Diplomatic envoys began to arrive, some bearing offers of alliances, others seeking trade or knowledge of the fabled dreadnought technology. For the first time, humanity had a seat at the galactic table, not as a conquered species but as a force to be reckoned with. But not all reactions were friendly. In the shadowed corners of the galaxy, murmurs of vengeance grew. Alien factions that had lost much to humanity's resurgence plotted in secret, their pride demanding retribution. The seeds of future conflict were sown even as Earth celebrated its survival. Humanity, however, was no longer the fractured species it had been. The war had united them in ways that no amount of diplomacy or treaties ever could. Old rivalries were set aside as people came together, bound by the shared trauma of nearly losing everything. Yet this unity came at a cost. The scars of war ran deep, both on the landscape and in the hearts of those who had lived through it. Leaders reflected on the lessons learned, vowing to strengthen Earth's defenses and never again be caught unprepared. Plans for additional dreadnoughts were drawn up, this time with open collaboration among humanity's colonies and allies. The war had taught them the value of preparation and the cost of complacency. Amidst the rebuilding, humanity took a moment to honor its fallen. Monuments rose in cities around the world, etched with the names of those who had given their lives. Ceremonies were held to remember the sacrifices made, and the stories of bravery and resilience were passed down to ensure they would never be forgotten. As the dust settled, humanity began to look forward. The war had revealed both their vulnerabilities and their potential. They had faced an existential threat and emerged stronger, but questions lingered about what came next. Would this newfound strength lead to a brighter future, or would it merely invite new challenges? In the final moments of reflection, a lone voice spoke, perhaps a leader or perhaps one of the many who had fought to protect their home. "We have seen the brink of extinction," the voice said, steady and resolute. "And we have stood against it. They came to destroy us, but instead, they taught us what we are capable of. Let this be our message to the stars: we are not conquerors. We are not invaders. But if you threaten our home, you will find that humanity is more than the sum of its scars. We are builders. We are dreamers. And we endure." Above Earth, the dreadnoughts drifted in silent vigil, their massive hulls glinting in the sunlight. They were reminders of the war, warnings to any who might dare to challenge humanity again. Yet, in their silence, they also carried the promise of a species that had faced the darkness and refused to fade. As the stars stretched out before them, humanity turned its gaze upward, ready to embrace whatever lay beyond, strengthened by the knowledge that no matter the odds, they would endure.